Yeah, standing up before I started was a little much, but just take it easy. Let's start to believe my own press. Let's just take a moment to invite God into the meeting. Father God, we thank you for this time tonight, Lord, and we ask you just to keep our minds open, our hearts open. Help us to hear the message, your message, and so thank you so much for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We thank you so much for giving us this place and this 12-step house and places like this where people like us are welcomed and they clap for us. It's all in your name. We pray. Amen. Amen. Hi, everybody. My name is Stevie B, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. Yay! And I'm a proud member of the West Side Men's Group. Nice! Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Wow. Wow. Fantastic. Well, I want to thank the Fort Lauderdale 12-step groups for asking me to speak. And thank you for asking me to speak tonight. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be here. And I had all these great stories that I was going to tell, but my first sponsor and my second sponsor happened to be sitting in the room at the exact same time. So that's it. I just got to stick to the book. I had all these great stories, but then Myron walked in, and then I was like, well, at least Russell won't be here for the second half, and he's here. So we'll keep it to the facts tonight. What a blessing tonight is. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to go to my first day of my horrific relapse before I go into everything else. My wife decided she was going to go out of the country. I had just had 6 years of continuous sobriety. I hadn't had a drink in 6 years. And I started doing things inside the house, which I'll tell you about for the next 12 weeks or the next 11 weeks. If you come here, I'll start telling you about a little of the extracurricular activities I was doing while I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And some of the people inside this room, like Wendy and Myron, were privy to that, and you guys saw what was happening, my demise, and I didn't see it. Because what I found out about alcoholism is you will be the last to know. You'll be the last to know. I thought my program was rock solid. I thought I had this thing. I felt really confident. I would even taken a statement saying that I will always be sober. As a matter of fact, drinking was the farthest thing from my mind. If you had asked me in any meeting that I was going to, did I ever think about drinking, I'd say it's the farthest thing from my mind. Now, I want to tell you over the next 12 weeks, when we speak about drinking, you have to understand, when I say drinking, I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous, but I want you to fill in the blanks when I say drinking. Obviously, if I tell you I spent $1,000 the night before, you understand what type of drinking I'm talking about. If I tell you that I was looking outside the window in a little closet that I built underneath the stairs for a month, you understand what type of drinking I'm talking about. So there's a lot of drinking going on in my life. Some small shots and some in tall glasses, but there's a lot of drinking. So if you would have asked me in my 6th year or my 5th year of sobriety if I was thinking about drinking, I'd say absolutely not. But if you would have asked me, do you think you're an alcoholic? Do you really think you're an alcoholic? And if I was honest with you in my 5th year of sobriety, I would have said, no, I don't. Because I knew I had a horrible problem with drugs. The information was obvious. Where I was living in the streets of New York and underneath stairs and all that nonsense it's obvious I had a horrific drug problem. But I had never thought, and even when I did my first step, I never thought that I had an alcohol problem. So being an Alcoholics Anonymous and introducing yourself as an alcoholic for 5 years under Myron, my sponsor, in the 11-step group in the back room over here, and introducing myself as an alcoholic, I really was introducing myself as an alcoholic so that I would fit in with you guys, but I never felt like I was an alcoholic. I always felt like I was a drug addict, but I liked Alcoholics Anonymous better, so I just said alcoholic. Now, what we're going to talk about in the first step tonight is that's a very, very precarious place to be, or a dangerous place to be if you're inside a program that has to do with alcoholism and you don't think that you have alcoholism. There's only so long that game is going to go on. And in the first step, it talks about that nobody likes to admit complete defeat. Nobody likes to say, you know what? I was wrong. I am an alcoholic. I lost at this battle. Everyone likes to keep some cards hidden. Everyone likes to keep some cards hidden like, yes, I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes, but I don't really have a drug problem, a drinking problem. I have a drug problem. So the whole time I would come to meetings and I would say, Myron, I'd like to introduce myself as an alcoholic and an addict. He says, that's not necessary. When you're an Alcoholics Anonymous, you introduce yourself as an alcoholic, and when you go to the other program, you can introduce yourself as an addict. And that worked for a while. But I already had bipolar disorder coming into the program, and to have 2 different titles in 2 different programs, it was definitely a little bit more than I can handle. So I really wanted to say I was an addict and an alcoholic. But it turns out really what I have is just run-of-the-mill, garden variety alcoholism. It has nothing to do with the substance that I used, the quantities that I used it, or the places that I did. It has everything to do with what centers in my mind, and I really believe that today. You see, you can say I'm a cornaholic. If I knew that corn, in all of its shapes and forms, fried corn and corn on the cob and corn giblets and golden corn, if I knew that corn would get me to a certain place that would relieve me of my mental obsession, I would use corn. But instead, I found that different things work a little bit faster than corn, like alcohol. Now, in my 5th year of sobriety, I started to read these magazines. Cigar aficionado. I started to smoke cigars in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's kind of a thing that guys do. You know, my good friend out in Minnesota, he introduced me to cigar smoking. He said, this is what guys in the program do. We don't drink. We don't go to strip clubs. But we do smoke cigars. So I said, okay. And I started smoking cigars. Now, for the first 4 or 5 years that I smoked cigars, I really had to try to enjoy it. It was the most disgusting thing I ever did, but I wanted to fit in. And as I pushed myself through that learning curve, and I started to actually tolerate cigars and like cigars, I started reading this magazine called Cigar Aficionado. And everybody in Cigar Aficionado usually had a cigar and a cognac. Or a cigar and brandy. Or a cigar and something in some type of glass with rocks, with ice. And there was always a beautiful girl on the side of the room in a long, slinky dress by the piano in front of a mahogany bar. And somehow I had forgotten that when I was in Pennsylvania, when I came into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was living under the stairs in a little room that I had built from a luggage closet. That I built this incredible security system that when I was in there, I built this wood piece that if you nail a nail in the middle and you turn the wood piece, it actually locks the door from the inside. It was a very high-tech security system. It was before Brinks. So somehow in the last 6 years of my sobriety, I had forgotten that I used to live under the stairs like Willard. And so when I started to read in Cigar Aficionado that these guys that were smoking cigars, and there was always this beautiful girl on the side with this long slinky dress in front of a piano and mahogany bars, I started to see myself as one of those guys. Now I want to tell you something that if you would have told me in my 6th year, are you thinking about drinking, I would have said absolutely not. Are you sure, Steve, that you're not thinking about drinking? I said absolutely not. But inside, in the inner workings of my mind, I did not think that I was powerless over alcohol in any way, shape, or form. And now that I had some time away from alcohol, I really didn't think I was powerless over it. As a matter of fact, powerless and alcohol were not in the same sentence for me. I had thought I had gained some power over a lot of substances other than drugs. Now, if you would say to me, do you think you're a drug addict? I would say, yeah, of course, absolutely, I'm a drug addict. But what I didn't understand about the disease of alcoholism is that the disease of alcoholism never enters into the front door. The disease of alcoholism enters into the back door. It's never going to say to you, you know what, Steve, I think that you need to go smoke some, and you need to just do it, and you need to go there, and you need to... It'll never say that to me. What it says to me is I think that you're a brandy, cognac, mahogany bar, leather attaché case, 3-piece suit type of guy. Now, I want to tell you that I work at the Fort Lauderdale Swap Shop. I've never worn a 3-piece suit to work in my entire life. As a matter of fact, I go in flip-flops and shorts. So the idea that I thought I was this 3-piece suit guy that was going to be able to sip cognacs and smoke cigars, I don't know exactly where it came from. I had never even met a cognac yet. And I had never really drank brandy other than like in Coca-Cola. So I don't know where I came up with this thing. But in my 5th year of sobriety, I went into the 11-step group, and I announced in front of Myron and LaDonna and everybody that I don't think that I have alcoholism. I don't want to drink, and I don't want to do drugs, but I've really been fooling you guys. And they all talked to me. I was 27 at the time, and they all talked to me. They come around me like I do with you, John. They came around me and they said, it's okay. We understand. You're going to go through this. It's peaks and valleys. And we all think that, it's in the big book and says we all will drink again. And there's this guy, and he retired. And he put on his slippers. And we all want to drink again, but we just don't one day at a time. And I didn't really like that answer. I wanted to really believe in my heart of hearts that I did fit into this program, because you can't admit complete defeat if you don't believe it. And what this tells us, what the first step tells us on the bottom in the 12 and 12, and let me say something. Where's Kevin? In this step series, if you decide to come back and you don't own a 12 by 12 or 12 and 12, you need to get a 12 and 12. Now, we're not going to be talking from the 12 and 12 the entire time, because there's things in the 12 and 12 that, I really truthfully don't. We're not going to be talking about the 12 and 12 the entire time. But you really do need to have a 12 and 12. You need to have a big book in Alcoholics Anonymous. These are the manuals of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, why not have the manuals? If I want to go to nursing school, I'm going to read the manuals. If I want to become a doctor, I'm going to read the manuals. If I want to, whatever it is, you're in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, you need to have these two books. And as Kevin likes to quote that I always say, if you don't have a 12 and 12, you're not really in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So get a 12 and 12. Because the first step in the 12 by 12 is rock solid. You see, they wrote the big book between 1935 and 1939, published in 1939. And they had all this great experience of just a couple years of sobriety, 3-4 years of sobriety. But then after being sober a while, 15 years, then they write to 12 and 12. That's good and bad. Good because there's a whole bunch of experience in here. Bad because they let a lot of humanness sneak into the 12 and 12. But not in the first step. Because on the bottom of the first step it says that we know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he can first accept his devastating weaknesses. Now, I came in Alcoholics Anonymous because I had a horrific drug problem. And I like to drink sometimes. But I could never really accept the powerlessness. So when I first started taking the pills in my 6 years of sobriety, a doctor prescribed me some pills for my broken toe. And the first thing that I didn't do was tell my sponsor. And then I really started to think, you know what, I could probably have a drink. Now, the reason I tell you all that and I start the story right there in that place is because I want you to know I was the last to know that I would be drinking again. The last to know. And I want to tell you guys something. Spike, I want to tell you guys something. You guys will be the last to know. The alcoholic is the last to know, Dave. It's the last to know. You are not going to get a memo that you are going to be the one to drink. And you know how you know that if you're not going to enough meetings, you might get that memo too late. Because you might drink. So, I pick up my 7-year medallion. Myron just happens to be in the meeting tonight. I pick up my 7-year medallion. I thank the meeting and I feel good about myself. I'm 30 years old. I have 7 years of sobriety. That's no joke. Sponsoring like 11 of the sickest guys you could possibly imagine on the face of the planet. All of which probably are doing time at this time right now. And I decided that week I'm going to celebrate my 7-year medallion by drinking. Now, I want to taste, and I say this in no jest. I never thought that by taking one drink that would ever do anything to actually jeopardize my sobriety. Listen to that statement. You have to understand, listen to that statement. You understand why I say that the disease centers in our mind? I never thought that taking a drink would jeopardize my sobriety. I just thought it was like taking a drink, like going to the movies. I actually wanted to go to the movies. So I order Chinese food and I order a Japanese rice wine. I mean, it seemed like a perfect mix. And I order that and I take that little shot of Japanese rice wine. 240 pounds at the time. The shot was like the size of a thimble. I thought it was just a nice accompaniment to Kung Pao chicken, exactly. I think that's what I had, actually. Or probably Happy Family. I was really into the Happy Family at that time. So I drink my little rice wine and my Happy Family. And this is what happened to me. I'm not going to tell you that my whole program disintegrated and I fell out of society and I was living on the Broward Bridge. I'm not going to tell you that. But it was like one moment I was in the program and the next moment I was out. Everything in the one moment I believed what you guys are saying. I believed in the 12 steps. I believed in the meetings. I believed in all of this. And then I didn't. As a matter of fact, one moment